And the buzz goes on. For sure, it is the Bee-a-Thon 3, and we're well into our day, all about promoting the connection between human beings and honeybees, these very, very important creatures on the planet, all the pollinators that make life happen, all the beautiful flowers, the fruit, the foods. And this entire day is designed to educate you, to inform you, and to inspire you, not just in your own lives, but to share that with other people as well. That's what the Bee-a-Thon is really all about. And I'm delighted to have with me in the studio, when I say we are live in the hive, I'm delighted to introduce you one of the grand ambassadors for the insect tribe. Professor Diane Ullman is a PhD in entomology, and she is also the Associate Dean of Entomology at University of California right here in Davis. In addition to that, her specialties, of course, in entomology are plant pathology, and she's a global expert on thrips, which are an important insect species for the growth of plants, especially tomatoes. And she has also been the co-founder of the Art Science Fusion Department, a world-renowned landmark department that teaches insect ecology through the arts, and it gives artists and scientists a new way to express their connection with the microcosm. Recently, Professor Ullman has received an AFRI coordinated agricultural grant of $3.75 million to explore further this beautiful connection between humans and insects. And she's definitely, as I mentioned, a grand ambassador for the insect tribe. Welcome back, I should say, Professor Diane Ullman.
Thank you very much, Emmett. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you in the studio again, and there's so much. We could probably do an entire broadcast just about your department, but let's start at the top. This honeybee connection, you have done some things at UC Davis that haven't been done anyplace else in the world, especially with the Honeybee Haven. Isn't that right?
Right. So Honeybee Haven is a garden that was initiated through funding by Haagen-Dazs. And you might ask, why would Haagen-Dazs care about honeybees? Everybody knows Haagen-Dazs makes ice cream. Well, the milk to make the ice cream comes from cows, and cows eat alfalfa.
Sure.
And alfalfa has to be pollinated to create new alfalfa seed. So without that connection, no ice cream. So Haagen-Dazs funded a pollination garden because they wanted people to understand that they could provide food for the bees.
Makes a lot of sense,
and
absolutely.
That garden is a perfect demonstration of that. The plants that are planted there are drought resistant, they're very well adapted to this area. So anybody who goes to visit can find plants they can put in their own yard, they can put on their porch in a pot, they can plant with their neighbor.
Beautiful.
So there are things there that the honeybees can eat. And that's thought to be a really significant component of how our pollinators are declining, that they just don't have enough forage.
Yeah.
So that's where Honeybee Haven came about. And our involvement in the Art Science Fusion program is that we teach a class called Art Science in the World of Insects. And we have focused on the honeybee for a number of different quarters that we've taught that class. And we've also taught some freshman seminars that surrounded that topic. Beautiful. Of survival of the bees. And through that work, we have created a lot of very educational artwork that's present at Honeybee Haven, and it gives the garden something really special aesthetically. It extends the learning we give to our students out to all the different visitors who come to the garden. And it's just simply beautiful. Yeah. So it integrates beautifully into the garden and really enhances it. As if the garden weren't
beautiful enough, your art makes it even more beautiful.
There you have it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's not just in the garden, it's all across the city of Davis. In fact, it's been all across the United States. You and one of the next guests on the Bee-a-Thon, Donna Billick, you created an installation that went all the way to Washington, D.C.
That's right.
And it wasn't just bees, though. It was the entire ecosystem.
Right. So that particular project, which is called Nature's Gallery, and now it is installed on campus in what we call Nature's Gallery Court. That was a collaboration with the Arboretum. So the UC Davis Arboretum has a garden called the Ruth Storer Drought Resistant Garden. And we took the students out there, had them fall in love with one of the plants, create a plant portrait, but also
Not hard to do, not hard to
not
do.
hard to do, and also to identify an insect in that garden that rocked their boat.
Yeah.
And because they chose what they wanted, we have a big diversity of insects that are in that installation. There is a honeybee up there. There's many, many other pollinators and beneficial insects. Just a few pests snuck their way in, but, that is the way it is,
they're
right?
Only pests to people. They're not necessarily pests to the ecosystem.
That's right.
The way it all works is a little bit beyond the comprehension of the everyday human being, right?
Yeah.
But it's a huge wall. It's probably about 50 feet long, yeah?
It's, well, that wall is almost 12 feet tall and
huge.
about 17 feet, I think, wide.
There we go.
But it's very, very large and beautifully done. We partnered with the campus, and all of the funding came from private donations. So this was really the community wanting to create something that was beautiful and something that reached out.
And it went across
visitors.
the country. And this is what I mean here. We're in the 21st century. We get to understand the microcosm in a way that nobody has been able to do before. And we get to express it in all these different fashions, not just in the digital world, but in the art and then in the ceramic medium as well. Now, in my forthcoming book, The Insect Tribe, Who, What, Why, I have an entire chapter dedicated to the work of Donna and Diane, and it's called The New Leonardos. The reason why is because MIT had coined this phrase about the third culture. It's not art, it's not science, it's the fusion between the two. And the word that you put on it is consilience. Tell me about that word.
Well, the word consilience was actually proposed in the late 1800s, but it didn't really make its way into the vernacular until the great E.O. Wilson wrote a book called Consilience. So consilience basically describes the unity of knowledge. So E.O. Wilson proposed in his book that the best solutions, the best means for survival of the planet was for the artists and the scientists to come together and create a unity of knowledge and more informed solutions for the problems that we have.
And of course, in the world of insect ambassadors, he might be the most important man of the 20th century for insect understanding. He's a myrmecologist, he's a professor at Harvard University, and he is certainly one of the men who has explored the parallels, connections, and influences between humans and insects, perhaps more than any other in the 20th century.
Very possibly.
His focus was ants, of course.
Right.
And I certainly hope perhaps in future Bee-a-Thons we could have Professor Wilson on to talk about that because he understands all of the insects. But if we bring it back to Davis right now, this department that you set up has been, it's been a re-evolution in the academic field. Isn't that correct?
Well, we're actually a program, and we're housed within something called Science and Society. So we have offerings to the undergraduate community that come from land, air, and water resources. There's an environmental scientist and an atmospheric scientist who offer courses through that, Terry Nathan and Wendy Silk. And then Donna and I are housed within the Department of Entomology. I have kind of a unique situation because I work with an insect that transmits plant viruses, so I also hold a graduate appointment in plant pathology. Okay. But the Art Science Fusion program and the course that Donna and I teach is connected back to entomology.
I see. And again, what we're talking about is an estuary where the ideas and the concepts sort of blend together to produce a profoundly effective result. And of course, your expertise is with thrips. You're one of 200 around the world. Is that the right number about that?
Yeah, I would say, well, 200 to 500, something like that.
So a few hundred experts, these tiny thrips that live in the stems and the leaves.
And the flowers.
And the flowers of plants. Most of them are barely visible to the naked eye. But more importantly, now you have bridged the gap, especially starting with the Honeybee Haven, where UC Davis it's really the epicenter for honeybee research in a lot of ways, and it's just recently been voted the top agricultural school in the world. So with this importance, with these distinctions and all of these honors, what message needs to be put forth about not just honeybees, but all the pollinators to really ignite the public imagination?
Well, I think the issue, and you illustrated it nicely in your earlier talk today, but the cover of Time magazine, what would the world look like without bees? So I would defy people to think about a world that had no nuts, no fruit, where there were no flowers. And that would be a world without bees. Now, how you get that message across to people who think of bees as something that might sting them, that's a huge effort that needs to be put forth.
Well, I think the most important thing that people need to understand is that a honeybee has no incentive to sting, unlike other stinging insects. The honeybee itself is a very docile creature, especially when they're away from the hive. They really just want to do their job of pollination and nectar gathering. When they sting a mammal, they actually die in the process. So I think the idea, more importantly, is to continue this education, to continue the outreach, and to put it, this is important for the insect tribe and the Bee-a-Thon, to put it into a beautiful format, a beautiful context that inspires people instead of just teaches them. Isn't that right?
Right. Well, I think that's got a lot of value. And I would like to see more people have a real experiential connection with the honeybee.
Well, it's a beautiful thing. And again, if anybody wants to look up, they have a website online. It's the UC Davis Art Science Fusion Department. And I think of all the people in the world that I could have had on the Bee-a-Thon, you were the one that was at the top of the list.
Well, thank
Professor
you.
Diane Ullman from the University of California Davis Entomology and Art Science Fusion Department, thank you for spreading the buzz on the Bee-a-Thon.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
And we're going to go to another video at UC Davis. It's from the beautiful domes, the 40-year project that now has a bee sanctuary with my buddy Derek Downey. We'll be right back.